Good morning, everyone. It's Rollie, and I want to welcome you back to another Chatting with Wisdom. And so today we are going to be talking about living a passionate and inspired life. And so I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Dawn Menge, who has won 41 international awards as the author of Queen Vernita educational series, including the Special Recognition Champion Award. She holds a PhD in curriculum and instruction, a master's degree and a clear credential in moderate severe disabilities, and a bachelor degree in human development. Dr. Menge has been teaching severely handicapped students for 20 years. She has 3 children, 5 beautiful grandchildren, and lives in Southern California. So welcome. And did I pronounce your last name correctly? I guess I should have asked that.
No, you did a good job. It's Menge.
Okay, good. Because then I thought, well, maybe it's Menge, and I'm like, I should have probably asked.
A lot of versions. The other day I got an email at work. My name was Dom.
Oh, good.
That come from, but yeah. But I do want to say that I do not have 5 grandchildren. I now have 6.
Yay, congratulations.
Yes, we had a baby girl a couple months ago.
Okay, congratulations. That is exciting.
Yes.
So, baby's nearby that you're getting to visit with baby, or?
Yeah, they actually live just a couple blocks from my work. And when we're done with this, I'm actually on my way to Zion National Park with all of my children and all of my grandchildren and my mom. And we're going to go camping until Sunday. So I'm hoping it will not be snowing.
I'm hoping it won't be snowing either, because if it's snowing there, then that means we have lots of snow over here. So we don't want that.
I have a friend that's camping in Grand Canyon, and they're in a tent, and it snowed yesterday morning, just as dusting. But yeah. Like, this is October.
It's not unusual for us to have snow in October. So, but we're very thankful so far that we've just had lots of rain and no snow. And yesterday it was like 20 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what that translates into Fahrenheit. But it's for us, that's actually a pretty warm fall day. So that was beautiful. So enough about the weather. So let's talk a little bit about you and what it is that you are doing and how all of this stuff came to be.
Oh, well, I just briefly talk about a lot is I started writing my series. The first one I wrote when I was getting my credential, and it was an assignment in my math class, and we had to write a math book. So what I did was I wrote it's on the days of the weeks and the months of the years, and I actually had my students in it. And it was called Queen Victoria's Visitors. And each month has a new friend and a new visitor and a new subject. And this one is my daughter, Ashley, and she's at the beach. But we would travel around, and we would do a little skit to the local elementary schools. And then I would go back the next day, and I would explain my students' behaviors or their disabilities. And we did it for pre-K up to 2nd grade. So we got a grant from a college, and we did that for several years. And then I had to get divorced, and I was like, well, my youngest was 18, and I'd been teaching, so luckily I had a career. And I was like, well, what am I going to do now with just myself? You know, I have now all this energy I was putting into my children and my family. So I decided to publish the book, which all teachers do. Teachers love, publishing books. That's what they do. So I named it after my grandmother, Vernita. And she was the matriarch of her family. And she actually went door to door with her father and founded a credit union. So she was an astute businesswoman and a world traveler. So I named the books after her. And everybody in my family, the children in my family, are the ones I put in the first book. Because I thought, well, they're all little and they won't complain. And, but that was really all I was doing, was just publishing this book. And I started my PhD. And so I started winning awards and getting interviews, and people were asking me, well, what are you going to do next? And I'm like, well, I love to travel. So that's something that my mom and my grandmother instilled in us. And my parents actually had a sailboat for 25 years. So they were big adventurers. So what I started doing was putting my adventures in here. So I published one on Alaska. And I put in all my friends, like from work and my family. This is my son-in-law, Joshua. And this one has, it has glaciers. And I've been to Alaska 3 times. And I took my mom, I like to make my mom do things. So I made her go snorkeling in Sitka. So we had to put a dry suit on, and we went in, and it kept us from freezing in the in the cold water.
Yep.
And so it has glaciers and sharks and otters, and we went to a crab feast and had a lot of fun. So that's what I started doing. And so it's kept me very, very busy. And this one I did. This is my brother. He's an astronomer at JPL, and his name is Heath. But when he was little, we called him Heathy Bean. So this is Sir Heathy Bean Queen Vernita meets Sir Heathy Bean, the astronomer. And he wanted to have the wild hair and the funny slippers. Because he actually was a professor when we wrote this. He taught at a college. And so I actually added disabilities. So this is Jake, and Jake is he's a foster child of my assistant for 20 years. And he has, let me make sure, he has cerebral palsy. And so he is in the book. So we're talking about the planets, and then each page has 7 facts. So there's 7 facts about cerebral palsy. So it's not like a lot of information. It's just a little bit. And then this is Jeremy, and Jeremy has Down syndrome. And Jeremy was actually one of my students. And so my book, and his mom was one of our teachers. And so it's just 7 facts about Down syndrome. And that is why I entered the Conquering Disabilities with Film Festival. I'd won a lot of awards, and I just like trying new things. So I saw it on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to try that, but I don't have a script or anything. So I contacted the lady and asked if I could enter my books, and she was like, sure. So in July, I went to Vegas, and that's actually the first time that I've gotten to go and actually receive the award in person. And it was really exciting, and I won the Special Recognition Champion Award from the Conquering Disabilities Film Festival. And then I also have Dragon's Breath. And this one I entered in the Miracle Makers Film Festival, and it won Best Book. And it won Best Book from Hollywood Dreams. Well, it was the honorable mention from that. So I've had a lot of fun writing my books and exploring with my family, and just having a lot of fun.
Beautiful. I love how you have incorporated your students and your family, and I love the astronomer one. I love your brother's crazy hair, and so like it's really fascinating how you're able to like bring all of these things together and bring about a lot of knowledge, right? So like when my children were little, mine are 25 and 26 now. And so when they were little, it was always about finding new books and having them read and being able to learn and having them be avid readers. And luckily, both of them are still avid readers, one more so than the other. But it's great to be able to have, and this is how my kids actually started, by reading these little books and at this age. So what age ranges are your books geared for?
Well, that's the wonderful part about this, is that they go from pre-K. This is one I just published a few months ago, and it's on, every year we go to Halama Beach. It's in the Central Coast of California, and we get to camp right on the beach. And so I actually needed more pre-K books, so they go from pre-K all the way up to 6th grade. And so like this, my astronomy book is more 5th and 6th grade level. So that's something I did over the pandemic, is I caught up on some of my books. So I've actually published 5 books since. Yeah. But this one is based on our camping trips. And this is my son-in-law and my grandson, and they're surfing. And it has kite flying. This is my granddaughter. And so it's pre-K to 1st grade, and it's just getting families out there and camping, and it has ostriches and raccoons. And something that I do, I started probably 11, 12 years ago, is I grew up in a small town in Wrightwood, and it's called Wrightwood, and I worked in the district for a long time. And so I started doing, they have a young authors conference, and it's where the children write stories, and then they get picked, and then they publish the ones that won. And so at the end, they have a conference, and the children all come and get their published books. And it's really exciting. And they come over and they read their books to us. And then I have all my books there. I'm like the featured author because I'm local. And the families will come up and they'll say, we read your book every night. And what did you write this year? And, that's really exciting to have the families coming, and their children are growing up with the adventures. And because it goes from pre-K to sixth grade, they can actually do that. And
Yep.
read to the little ones. And then that's really exciting. It's really fun to have them up and say, well, what did you do this year? We haven't gotten to do it because of the pandemic for the last year. So I'm hoping I get to do it this year. But that's something that authors don't really get a lot of, is feedback from people who are actually reading their books. People buy their books, but you don't, unless they go and they actually write a review or they contact you, you don't know if they bought it and they just stuck it in the cabinet,
Yep.
and really looked at it. So that's one thing I always encourage when I'm doing is, if you're reading a book and you love it, tell the author. Even if the author is some famous person, they still want to know that you're reading their book and you're enjoying, and your child is getting something out of it.
Well, that's pretty exciting. So how many books have you written?
I just turned in, I believe it's my 14th. I just turned it in to the publisher yesterday. It's a place called Hacienda Linda. It's in Tucson, Arizona. And it's all about the desert. And it's going to be 6th and 7th grade level. It's very high. It's more almost a chapter book. The person that my co-author is very skilled in writing. And we actually had to kind of tone it back a little bit. But it's going to have camel riding and missions and a lot of educational information and a lot of adventure. And so I'm really excited about that. And then this summer, I had a family that I actually grew up with, and they moved to Wyoming. And the father, like 10 years ago, I went and visited them, and we talked about writing a book and never got back to it. So he contacted me and asked me, when are we going to write this book? And I'm like, I'm going to come out this summer. So I did. My mom and I took a road trip, and we went up through Yellowstone, and then we went down to Wyoming, and I spent a week with them, and they showed me around. And so I think we're on our 6th illustration. So there's going to be one on Wyoming.
Beautiful. And so I shared the link in the descriptions, and I just got an error code. So I'm going to have to go back in afterwards to share it again. But it's pretty fascinating how you take these and they're real life, right? So they're real life. It has that connection of being able to really allow you to be able to be in the moment. And I don't have the little ones anymore, but I'm thinking that with the little ones that do come around, I'm gonna have to get some of these so that I can actually do story time with them. So
yes, that would be great. That's one thing. I did an interview with somebody, and I think he was in St. Louis, and this was so he was talking to his friend, and he says, she's been checking out your books from the library. I didn't even know they were in the library in St. Louis. And she actually got another job so she could take her child traveling. And I would not have known that if I was not having this interview with him. But I thought, wow, that's really great, that the books had that impact, because that's what I want it to have. And yes, go into my Facebook, and there's albums for each one of the books. And then there's the real pictures from our trips. And then you can see what we actually did. I have a friend who lives in Kona, Hawaii. I grew up with him, and he married a woman who grew up in Kona. So they moved there. And when I got divorced, I went there probably every 6 months, because I could just fly over there and stay with them.
Yep.
Went there. My son actually got married on there. And so I actually have 2 books written about him and his wife. The first one I did, I think this was my 3rd book. And it's called Queen Vernita Visits the Islands of Enchantment. And he is Sea Captain Jeff. And this is Sea Captain Jeff. And his wife is Enchantress Carrie. And this is actually a bird that's in his yard, and this child is blind, and he's explaining what's going on. I don't think that's right. Wait, yeah, she's blind, and then this is a real person, and then this child is listening to the ocean, and so I have that, and then here we went swimming in a lava tube, my whole family, and they have a sanctuary where you, and so we've been there a couple of times, and you go and they put the baby seahorse in, the seahorse wraps its tail around your finger, and you get to hold it. It's really exciting, and if you go through the tour they have, you can actually have a seahorse at home, but you have to go through the training and stuff to learn how to raise the seahorse. And then the last time we went, there's an octopus place. And so we went there and we were feeding the octopus, and they were wrapping their tentacles around our hands, and they actually squirted my grandson. It scared him, but it was kind of funny. So all of that stuff, all the videos and everything, they're all in my Facebook and on my Instagram. And this one is one I did last year. And this is one of the ones I entered into the festival, the Conquering Disabilities Festival. And this little girl is a real little girl. Her name is Ireland. And she has Rett syndrome. And so she is lacing the flowers to make leis for all of her classmates. And so there's just 7 facts about Rett syndrome. And she's explaining to the Queen her disability and why her mom needs to help her lace the flowers. And my illustrator takes the actual pictures from my trips, and we incorporate them into an illustration. This one is Connor, and Connor has autism. And this is Connor and his dad, Steve, and he was my student. So they're real people. And so they're at the Volcanic National Park. And they're explaining to the Queen, he has a communication device because he's nonverbal. So he's explaining to the Queen the volcanic part and why he needs to use a communication device. So a child is reading this and they're learning all about volcanoes. And we went swimming with the sharks. We went to Oahu and drove over to the North Shore, and we went out 10 miles in the ocean, and we went out in a shark cage. And we did this when my first granddaughter, I believe she was 8 months old. And I went in with the boys first. And so the sharks were swimming around and stuff, and we kept trying to touch them. It was really exciting. But my older daughter stayed on the boat and sharks. And so we saw them jumping up out of the water and getting all the food. And so she wouldn't go in the shark cage. That part. So we just got to see them swimming around, and they weren't like great whites or anything, but it was really exciting. But that's in here. And so if a child's reading this, he's learning all of that. He's learning that, you can go to Hawaii and you can go in a shark cage, or, you can walk down the bottom of a lava tube and go swimming. You can go there and swim with the turtles, and you can see all that. But it's also giving you just a little bit of information about the disabilities, so it's not too overwhelming. It's not about disabilities. And the children in here, they're all living their lives. And that's something I really like to promote, especially with my students. They're students. They're students, children, and they're living their lives. And it's just, they have to make some accommodations to live their lives.
Yeah.
This helps. So if a child's walking around campus and he has an iPad, which is the communication device, and another child sees this, they don't think, well, how come he gets to play video games and I don't? We'll look at it and say, oh, this is how he's going to talk to me. And then he will address, the child this way. And it's easier for both of them to kind of introduce that.
Yep. I love that. I really love how you have that incorporated, because it's exactly that, is that you have to make accommodations. Doesn't mean that they can't live. And so I love how you're able to do that. So you talked about that they're your real pictures of your trips. And so, and then you have an illustrator. So is it the same illustrator for all of your books, or do you have different illustrators that kind of that come up?
No, I actually when I first started, I just hired the illustrator from the publisher. And then I had about 3 out, I think. And a publisher in France contacted me. They were looking at my books, and they said that the text content was higher than the illustrations. And so I needed a new illustrator. So I actually met her. She was actually illustrating some books for my brother. He wrote a book, and then he was writing a graphic novel. So she was illustrating that. And then she was at one of the book signings that I had been at. So I hired her. She only lived a block from me. It was nice. And so she's actually really enhanced her trade as we've gone along. And so I used the same one for my Queen Vernita series so that they all have the same look. But when I did Dragon's Breath, it's not a Queen Vernita book, so it's totally different. I wanted it to be totally different. So I actually have a new publisher, and I hired someone through that one so that it looked different.
Yeah.
Book. It's a fairy tale. It's kind of based on some experiences that I had. I was dating someone, and he had a friend, and she didn't want me dating him. So she actually stalked me for like 6 years. I had to sell my house. It was a big mess. But my friend and I, Judy, who's my co-author, she was trying to help me, and we were sitting in the sheriff's office talking to detective, and he confirmed, yes, it was this woman. We just couldn't catch her. But so we took a trip to Vegas, and on the way to Vegas, because this went on for years, we actually wrote this book on the way there. So it's about Queen Giggles and King Teddy Bear, and the king meets a dragon because she called me a dragon slayer. So dragons, telling everybody how she's going to help others and help them thrive, because she was part of a ministry. So she was telling everybody, that's why I met her. She was supposed to be helping me. She wasn't helping me. But so the dragon is blowing black smoke on the crops at night, and the crops are dying. And everybody's sad, and nobody knows what's going on until the king actually catches her. And then he banishes her and tells her to go away, and then they all live happily ever after. I just published it in February, and it's actually been read all over the world, and it's really enjoyed. It's really being enjoyed, and it's doing a lot of lessons. And that's the part that's best, is when a child's reading a book, they don't know they're learning.
Yeah.
I gave it to another author, and she had a little boy. He was 6, and she read it live. And so they were going through it, and all of the conversations that they were having just from the book, he was trying to problem solve with the dragon. He's like, well, why didn't the king just get his guards and catch the dragon? And then he's like, well, he'll put a big net out, and he'll put some food in it, and then the dragon will go in, and they'll catch the dragon. And it was really cute. And then at the end, he said, well, I don't think the dragon actually meant to hurt anybody. And so just the problem solving, the vocabulary building, she was explaining some of the words. It's like, that's what you want. That's what an author and a teacher wants from their books. They want the children and the adults to be learning. And so this is just a lesson on, being nice to people, not hurting people when you're jealous or angry. And he was learning it, and it's just really nice.
Beautiful. And I love how, like you said, that you were able to see how they were able to learn that, right? So it was like, this is interesting, this is fantastic, and they're able to learn those different lessons. So
yes, it was. I'm glad that she did it live like that, because it was really nice. And then did a lot of, everybody's doing a lot of interviewing, now that we were on the pandemic and learning Zoom and stuff.
Yeah.
But there was someone who asked for an author for a class. And so I said, yes, I'll do that. So I actually ended up reading it to a 2nd grade class in Paraguay. And, that would not have been possible if we weren't on the pandemic. We weren't doing Zoom. And so it was really, they couldn't really speak a lot of English, but they were so excited, and they kept saying the illustrations are beautiful. And one little boy says, I'm going to come there, and you're going to read a story to me. And I'm like, I will read a story to you. But they were so cute. And I would not have had that opportunity.
Yeah.
Doing the things the way that we were doing them.
Well, and that's one of the things that's really interesting, right? So like we talk about how debilitating that a lot of the situations have been with the pandemic, and that there's been so many restrictions and there's so many upheavals of our lives. But that connection that we have been able to make worldwide, like I've been working on Zoom for a long time. So like I've connected with people around the world, but having more people being able to come together and having it so that it's a lot more of a norm to be able to have that opportunity. And like you said, having that opportunity to be a guest author somewhere around the world is where you don't have to travel, you don't have to get there, your expenses. So like it makes things a lot cheaper and a lot more cost effective.
Yes.
Being able to do that. And because depending on where it is that you are, where they're reaching out to in the world may not necessarily be something that is financially feasible for them specifically, right? So having a teacher fly out an author to come and read a book is not something that they can pull out of their pocketbook because it's not within the budget. But being able to have that opportunity to be able to reach out and have that opportunity is incredible.
Yes, yeah, I've had interviews with people from Australia and Jamaica and New Zealand and Dubai and India, and it's just been really exciting. And I've written articles. I found that, like in Jamaica and Australia, I think I'm going to go on there and talk about my books. What I end up talking about are my students and what we're doing with them. And so I've written articles for magazines, all over the place on what our guidelines are for our students and what we're doing with them. And that's been really interesting for me, because you never know what someone's going to be interested in when you get on there.
Yeah.
And so, we're able to just go where the interest is. And it's been really exciting, so I'm sorry this happened, but I do a lot of stuff with Story Monster educational magazine out of Arizona. And so I was driving there a lot and doing book events with them. And I was exhausted. That's a lot of driving, and it's 6 or 7 hours. I really enjoy doing it. I love doing it in person and all of that, but I was tired. And so now I've gotten to travel all over the world, and now that we're back in class, it is a lot harder for me to, I actually am on fall break right now, or I'd be at work right now. But, now that we're back in class, it is harder for me to do
Yeah.
I have one. I'm not even sure offhand where she is. She might be from Australia, but it's at 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that even with Chatting with Wisdom is that because there are different time zones, is that I always have that little blurb that says, like, if the time doesn't suit you, then shoot me a message and we'll figure out and sort out a time so that we can make it so that it's more convenient. It's convenient for me on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern time, but it's not convenient for somebody who's on the other side of the world. And we've had different people that have actually showed up at 6 a.m. and I give them huge kudos. It's like, we could have changed the time though. If you would have told me, we could have bumped it back a little. But it's really incredible in terms of being able to have that. So I have a women's conference that I host in March, and we were able to do it globally because normally it's in person, and we were able to do that globally. And it was so interesting to be able to have people from Australia and having people from the UK that had actually participated in that. And it really does have this, it allows you really to get fully connected with the world. And I love it. And the fact that your books are all about your travels and your adventures, and it just makes it even that much more, I don't even know what the word that I'm looking for, but like it just enhances that piece of like, you get to travel all over the world. And when full travel is back open again, being able to go and travel to Australia or travel to Peru or travel and being able to do those kinds of things, and then being able to write a book where kids get to learn and parents get to have that enjoyment of connecting with their kids. Because I know that for me, reading with my kids, it was always about that connection, right? So it was a bedtime read. Yes, we read at other times of the day as well, but bedtime, we always read at bedtime. And so like that was just our end of the day. Didn't matter what was going on. whether we took a big story or we took a little story. Maybe it was only going to be 3 or 4 pages, but it was still something that we did before bed, no matter what it was that was going on, because then it just allowed us to have that connection. And I had been reading to my kids from the time that they were little. So like, I think my oldest one was less than 12 months old, and I was reading to him, like as soon as he was able to like sit and read with me, that he would curl up and read a book with me, is when we started reading. And then of course, when his brother came along, he started reading with us at a much younger age, because he would come and join his big brother. And so that's just how we got into that love of reading. And my youngest one has dyslexia, and so reading was, when he started to learn to read, that was a really huge challenge for him, and he had a lot of difficulty with that, and he stopped reading, and he didn't want to have anything to do with it because it was just too stressful. But we still did story time at bedtime every night, and if I wasn't reading to him, his brother was reading to him, because his brother started taking turns reading, because he was reading and comprehending at a grade 8 level in grade 2. And so he started reading. And so then his brother would get really intrigued with listening to his big brother read. And to the point where he was actually starting to read. We started reading Harry Potter books with him, with my oldest one, when he was in grade 3. And so it was like a chapter a night, or 2-3 pages a night. And so then we would close them up and only read so much, because it's like, okay, I've read with you, now I have to go read with your brother, or vice versa. And so by the time that I would actually come to read with him, he had already read ahead in the story. And it's like, okay, this isn't working anymore. We can't do story time together if you're reading ahead. How am I supposed to know what's going on? But it was great. And so, and like I said, he still is an avid reader, and now he travels a lot, so he's driving a lot, and he's a truck driver. And so he's like, well, now I can't read, because he used to read like one of these great big huge thick novels in like 2 days, if that. And so now he actually does audiobooks. And so he's like, he said, I've switched over to audiobooks because I still want to be able to have that enjoyment of reading. And it's really incredible to be able to have that love of reading, and you get to bring it to them at this young age, from, like you said, JK to grade 6. And they have that opportunity to be able to have these fun adventures where they get to learn, and they have this opportunity. And so this is fantastic. So thank you so much for doing this for all of the parents. And I will definitely share out your series to all of my young mom friends that I have, and different clients, because this is really something that is extremely needed, in my opinion. I'm also
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
I just got a notification, and that's what I was doing, is reading the notification. It's like, you just lost your connection. And I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah. It's fun for me to write them, obviously, but yeah. This one is a good one, since Christmas is coming. And it's one I did just get out. And on the back, it has the picture of our family, 19 of us. And what we did is we went from Williams, Arizona to the Grand Canyon, and we rode a train. So this is a pre-K to first grade, and it's all about our train ride. And the Queen meets the bandit, and they're my grandsons, and the bandit actually was holding them up. We had a horse that rode along the train and got on the train. And then when we were done, we were singing on the train. When we were done, we went back, put our pajamas on, and we went on the Polar Express. And everybody's read the book, but Santa Claus was there. We were reading the book. We had cookies and hot chocolate. And this is actually my grandson, and he fell asleep in Santa's lap. So this is a great read for Christmas coming up.
Yeah.
And we went to a Santa's workshop, and the children were actually making stuffed animals at the workshop. And so that's what they're doing in the book. And so what it does is, like, if they're reading that book, or, they're reading the camping book, then they can see the pictures and they can see, wow, like, we can really go do this.
Yeah.
And so it's a way to keep the families together and talking. And when I was growing up, when I was in the third grade, I was having trouble learning to read. And my dad sat down with me every night and we until I learned to read and I was fluent in it. And I love to read. And so I kind of think that's why, I mean, it was an assignment in my class, but it's always been kind of a thought in my head that I wanted to write a book.
Yep.
And I was little, we camped a lot. And I always wanted to write a book about a dog. I had a dog and we went camping and I was going to write this book, but it was for a lot of people, they think, oh, I want to write a book. Someday I'm going to write. And then they never do because they're scared or they think no one wants to read my books or, you get that feeling, but you have to just go out there and try.
Yeah.
Have to try. The lady that runs the film festival, it's for disabilities. And so she is bipolar. And she had a dream that she wanted to make films. And then she had these episodes and then she had to go through all that. But what she started to do is she started writing it down. And then she started a blog. And then her blog became a book. And then her book became a script. And then it became a movie. And so now she's going all over the place. She has her own film festival. She's going all over the place. She's always winning some award somewhere, and now she has an agent. But you have to start somewhere.
Yep.
You have to start. And if you want to write, just start writing notes, don't worry about, well, is anybody going to read this? Or, you have to write your passions. And if you're writing about what you love or what you're doing, it's gonna resonate with someone. And that's really what you want. You want to connect one person out there. You could really help just one person, and that's okay because that person needed you.
Yeah.
And you don't know. I always tell people especially when they're just starting out and they're starting to do book events or talking conferences, when you're talking to people. I went to an elementary school and I read to like 40 or 50 kindergartners. I read the Queen Vernita book. So my brother was doing his astronomy book with the third graders. So I got done faster and I was standing in the back of his presentation and he introduced me and introduced what I did for a living. And this little boy starts talking and he starts talking about his little sister. And his sister had just passed away. And she had been in one of our classes, not my class, but in class, she was disabled. And so just because he connected with me and I didn't even say anything, he just knowing what I did for a living, he connected with me and he was able to talk about something that had just happened to him that was devastating. And so afterwards we went, my brother found him in his class and we gave him a whole set of the books. And his teacher said that he hadn't been talking for weeks. And that was the first time he started talking about it. And he was talking in front of everybody and talking about this. But that would not have happened if we just hadn't have been there reading about astronomy.
Yep.
When you go to do something, when you're doing your conferences and you start talking to people, you go in with this thought that this is what I'm going to be doing. This is what I'm going to be teaching or talking about. And your conversation could go someplace totally different. And you have to be ready for that. And you have to people that you're talking to. And what is it they're connecting to? Like I said, I could be talking to someone in Australia and think, oh, I'm going to talk about my books. And here, no, they're more interested in what I do for a living and say, okay, we're not talking about the books. We're talking about what we're doing, the community instruction, and then I talk about, I loved taking my students out. When I was growing up, when we were in elementary school, we got to go one day a week and go skiing, snow skiing. That was our PE. And so everybody, like half the day, we'd go up there. And so when I started teaching in the same district, I wanted my students to have that experience. So I got some grants and I took my students snow skiing. So despite whatever disability they had different levels of the snow skiing. Some of them were higher and they learned to snowboard. And the boys, I always had this motto that, you have to try something. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it again, but you have to try it. So they wanted to know why I wasn't snowboarding with them. So my sister and I tried to snowboard. It did not work. I can tell you that. We went like 5 feet all day. Couldn't do it at all. And they had a great time laughing at us as they were going by us. But then some of my other students had seizures or Down syndrome like Jeremy, or, visual impairments. I can't see you anymore. So they went and they had skis and they had reins that kept them skiing. Are you still on there? There you are.
I am now. Sorry, my computer just shut down. It was like, oh no, where'd it go?
Oh, I wasn't keep talking to myself. But we would, so the other students would have skis, they would have reins, and so the ski instructors would be guiding them with the reins. And then the ones that had really bad seizure disorders or they weren't strong enough, they actually sat in the sled and they went down the ski slope on the sled. And so I just wanted them to have those experiences. So sometimes that's what we talk about. And so you just never know.
Yep. And you don't, right? So this is amazing. And like I said, so I've shared your link with all of your books in it, and so that you have that, everybody has that opportunity to be able to go and check things out. And your stories are enlightening. So I'm super excited to find some children to read to. This is definitely something that I'm super excited to be able to do. And we have a young girl that comes around. She's super big on story time, so I'm gonna try and see if I can convince her to like come and read books with me. So, but I love it. I love how you brought all of that into real life and how it's all intertwined and connected. And so, thank you so much. Dawn, for joining us and sharing your passion with everyone, and how inspiring it is for you to be able to share those stories and inspire others to be able to go on adventures and or even being able to write their own books. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you for having me. And yes, if you do let me know.
Sorry, you cut out. I didn't hear what you said.
If you do story time with the book, let me know. Give me pictures. Show me.
I will definitely do that. So thank you so much, everyone. And I will chat with all of you guys later. Have a fabulous week. Bye for now.